on our speakers.
Thank you, Allison, and welcome everyone. Thank you all for participating today. We're really pleased to share with you information about iMapInvasives, which you will see is a really powerful application for tracking invasive species, including observations of where species are present or not confirmed, as well as managing more advanced data like where you've treated for invasives. The speaker lineup today, which I want to introduce, starts with Shelley Cooke. Shelley is a software support specialist who works with me at NatureServe, and she's going to introduce you to the IMAP application. And that will be followed by 3 speakers who are using iMapInvasives in their jurisdictions. We'll start after Shelley with Jason Denham. He's a forester with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And then we'll have Sarah Wurzbacher. She's a forestry extension educator with the Penn State Extension in Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. And then Lindsey Wise, Biodiversity Data Manager with the Oregon Biodiversity Information Center. And then we'll return to Shelley, who will do some wrap-up presentation of where you can find more information about all the resources you will see today. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Shelley.
Go ahead. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, now we can. Thank you.
All right, I am going to share my screen, and I am going to start off with a story map that I've created. This will be posted on our website and will also go out in the email that everyone will receive about the recording. So this will be available and posted on our social media as well. So iMapInvasives. What is iMapInvasives? So Lori kind of mentioned, look, IMAP is an online mobile-friendly GIS-based mapping platform for tracking and managing invasive species. It's used by natural resource professionals and citizen scientists alike, and it's customizable per jurisdiction for species lists and managed layers as well. And throughout this presentation, you will see some of the highlighted invasive species as we kind of scroll along. So the IMAP Partnership is comprised currently of 7 actively participating jurisdictions. One of the highlights of becoming a member of IMAP is that you helped guide the development of new functionality. We share resources, we have monthly meetings for the jurisdictional admins, and the jurisdictional admins generally help administer the application within each jurisdiction. So here's the current map of the jurisdictions. Each jurisdiction will have an administrator that takes on this, what we call the J-admin role. We have monthly meetings where we meet to discuss what's coming down the pipeline in terms of new development. We will vote on certain functionality, and we discuss new species to be added to the species list. So it's a very interactive collaboration that we have. We help each other out, we troubleshoot, and we're kind of there to support each other throughout this whole process, which is kind of makes us unique among other other invasive species applications, which kind of brings us into this next section on, so why iMapInvasives? There are obviously a lot of other IMAP other invasive species mapping applications out there. So what's kind of sets IMAP apart from these other platforms? One of the main things is that we collect multiple types of information. So we have presence data, which are your basic observations. We collect not detected records and also treatment records. There are a lot of other applications out there that collect all of these types of data in one central location. We also allow for points, lines, and polygons, which is also really nice. So you can collect all those different types of data sets. We also have lots of custom functionality built in. You can filter right on the map. We have email alerts that you can set on a variety of different scenarios. You can have it emailed daily, immediately, weekly, on species or habitat type, basically almost anything that is in our filter tool. We have an export tool available where you can export in CSV, shapefile, and geodatabase. We have custom distribution maps, reporting tools, and more functionality keeps coming out weekly or monthly. Coming down the pipe, we have a bulk upload tool, which will be done next month. So that'll be something else that we can add to the list here. One of the also nice things about IMAP is it's easy enough for citizen scientists to use, but it's also robust enough for land managers and natural resource professionals who need to track that treatment data, who need that survey information, who need those numbers to refer to and be able to determine where to put their treatment efforts, where to search for invasive species. And so it's really nice in that manner. One of the other things is that the species lists, as I mentioned before, are customizable, but so are roles and permissions. So not everybody who joins your jurisdiction might not have the same role. So people can be data managers, they can be administrators, they can be regular users. So that's all customizable per your jurisdiction. And we also have projects where each jurisdiction can set up as many projects as they want. Someone can be a project administrator, and this allows you to track different treatments, presence records, not detected records within a certain project, and then you can report on projects so that you can really get the effectiveness of what you're working on. I touched a little bit about the record types, but I'm just going to go through these again. So the basis of all of our record types are the searched area. So as it says, the searched area is where you looked for your species that you're interested in finding. And every record has a searched area. A lot of times when you create a record, the search area is automatically generated. You might not even know when you're digitizing it on the screen that it's creating this, but it will create it and it'll give you the link to it after the record is created. After you have created it, you can go in and you can enter information such as landscape conditions, weather, crew, survey methodology, and other things. And each searched area can be comprised of one or more presence not detected or treatment records. The presence record is basically your observation record. This is what did you find and where did you find it and on what date. So it's one, it's, you know, you can't have more than one date associated with a presence record. It's on one specific date. You can add photos, counts, comments. I believe you can have up to 5 photos per presence record. And again, these can be points, lines, or polygons on the map. And so these are the data record here. And then this is kind of what it would look like in IMAP. So you can see these are different presence records that are located in this area. Then we have the not detected records. These indicate where you did not find a species. By default, the not detected record takes the shape of the searched area. So you can't say, I didn't find something here, but I did find it over here. If you didn't find it, you didn't find it anywhere within the searched area. This data is very important for natural resource managers because it allows them to know where to concentrate their searched areas. And a lot of times this data is kind of overlooked. So this is kind of a really important part of IMAP. And it allows you to put in searched area or searched effort, like why you didn't find it. You can upload pictures of like a disturbed area. And it's become a very important piece of IMAP. Then we also have our treatment records. Treatments are lists of what invasive species were treated and where you treated them and the methods used and the outcomes. And here you can see treatments are located in, they're indicated in brown on our map. And within the data record, you can indicate the type of treatment type. We have chemical, mechanical, fire, grazing, and trapping. And when you choose your treatment method, all the different fields will show up for the different treatment types. So that's, it all changes depending upon what kind of treatment that you did. We have reports that are coming that will help you determine the effectiveness of your treatment methods as well. We also have different types of mobile technologies for IMAP. I mentioned before that IMAP in itself is mobile responsive, so you can take IMAP out in the field on your smartphone, and as long as you're in connectivity, you can use all of the functionality that is built in IMAP on your smartphone or tablet. If you move outside of connectivity, we have an IMAP Invasives mobile application that is available in the app stores. We have it for both Apple and for, it's in the Play Store, so you can use it on pretty much any mobile device. However, the downfalls of this is that there's no treatments available and it's only points at this point in time. So you can enter presence record and not detected records in points. So this is very useful for citizen scientists. You can use it outside connectivity, but we don't have anything yet available for treatments. However, we are currently working on a Survey 123 app that will allow point line and polygon presence treatment and not detected records. And so that we anticipate will be done hopefully within the next month. So that is coming as well. I was going to touch just a little bit on distribution maps. I had talked a little bit about this as being a really powerful tool. This just came out in the past couple of months. So they're very, very easy to make. The first step in creating a distribution map is you will set a filter on whatever species you're interested in creating the distribution map for. You can also put in a time frame. You can do distribution maps by organization, project, kingdom. Pretty much any of the filter criteria here you can create a distribution map for. Then you will go to the legend and you will select what layer, what geographic layer you would like to base it on. So county, hydro basin, water bodies, etc. You can create, you can choose whatever color you would like. And once you have chosen those things, then you click show the distribution layer and it pops up right on the map. You can remove it just as easy as you put it on there, or you can even save it as a layer on the map. It only saves it for the instance that you have going, but it enables you to put more than one layer on top of each other. You can do multiple species at one time. If you want to create another distribution map with a different geography, it's as easy as just changing the distribution by here and choosing a different one. Here I chose hydro basin, click show the distribution layer, and now you have it by hydro basin. And again, I mentioned that you can layer the different species on top of each other. So here we have curly leaf pondweed and water chestnut by hydroshed. And so you can also change the transparency of these layers to make it look however you want to, and then you could use that in your reports. Which brings us to the next bit of functionality, which are reports. Right now we offer 3 standard report types. All of the reports are run by a report wizard in which you can either draw your geographic boundary on the map, or you can choose an existing geography like county, hydro basin, jurisdiction. So we have our species list by geography report, and that it's very straightforward. It gives you a species list by whatever geography you selected or drew on the map. So it can run on whatever layers you have turned on the map. So in this instance, I had confirmed presences. So it goes ahead and it lists whatever presences that you had that were in that geographic boundary. It will also include a map snippet. If you choose, you can choose to include one or not to include one. And in this particular report, you can also report on not detected records and treatments. So you can get a list of treatments that are in your area, not detected records. You can also include approximate and unconfirmed data as well. We have an infested area report. So infested area will add up all of the the area of all the polygons for whatever criteria you selected. And that will give you the infested area of that geometry that you either drew or selected on the map. It will also give you the option of including points and also lines for that geography. And it will buffer those by whatever buffer. Here, I wanted my point buffer size to be 5 meters. That's the default, but you can change it to whatever you wanted. In this instance, line data was not included, but this legend here will tell you everything that you included and what the time frame was. This is very nice, the time frame, because you can find out what your treatment effectiveness is by putting in beginning and end dates. So if you're treating an area and you wanted to know if the infestation has decreased over time, you can run this over various time frames to see if those infested acres have decreased or stayed the same. So this is a very powerful tool. Again, you can include a map snippet here. This was a very large area here that I did. And you also have your disclaimers at the bottom of the map. And the other type of report that we just finished is approaching region. So approaching region will give you all of the species that occur in a designated distance from the boundary or geography that you've chosen. So you'll either draw a geography boundary on the map, or you will select a boundary like county, and then it'll prompt you to enter a distance from which that you want to know what species fall within the buffer but not within the drawn geography. So it'll give you real-time information on what species you currently don't have, but you should be on the lookout for. So in this instance, you can also choose to have confirmed, unconfirmed, and approximate data included or excluded from your report. So this kind of will give you up-to-date information on what is knocking at your door and how many. These are counts of what is there. So these are, this I think will be a very valuable tool for land managers, again, to kind of keep an eye out for what might be coming into their region that they're interested in protecting. So that's kind of a quick whirlwind tour of IMAP. It's kind of some of our highlighted functionality, and all of the user stories that are in this map are also being talked about. So I'm going to turn this over to Jason, and he is going to talk to you about his role with some HWA data.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep. Shelley, are you going to unshare your screen? Yep, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, everyone. Well, my not very imaginative title for this talk is how New York State uses iMapInvasives to support hemlock woolly adelgid management. Let's see, can I get this to start? There we go. So again, I'm Jason Denham, and I'm with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in a bureau called Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. We used to be called Forest Health. And basically, my job is to manage things that make trees sick or kill them, primarily insects and diseases. And a lot of what we do is invasive species, though not everything. For those of you who are not familiar with HWA or hemlock woolly adelgid, this is an invasive insect pest of hemlock trees. And for us in New York, that means eastern hemlock, which is really important because this is a keystone tree species in our ecology in New York State. It is our third most common tree. It is our most common coniferous tree and the most shade tolerant coniferous tree as well. So it really is a part of many different types of unique ecosystem here in New York, and the loss of it would have a ripple effect throughout many different parts of the ecosystems in our state. Hemlock woolly adelgid itself is the little black specks you see in the upper right corner. Each of those is an insect. They're quite small. They have a mouth part, though, that is a straw-like extension many times longer than their body. And that is actually inserted into the twig at that point where they feed from the tree. And as they do this, they produce a woolly, waxy ovisac, which you can see in the lower picture. That's how most people identify this insect, is by finding those ovisacs or egg masses. Generally, this takes anywhere from 3 to 10 years or even much more from initial infestation to result in tree death. And we're at different stages of invasion here in New York State. We have some areas where this is a early detection species, and we have other areas where it's been in existence since the 1980s and has already caused a great deal of hemlock mortality. So the monitoring needs and the management needs around the state differ a lot. And another complicating factor with this particular insect is that the population levels, even in places that are where it's well established, can fluctuate from year to year. 2019, where I am in Troy, New York, was actually a very difficult time to find hemlock woolly adelgid because of some weather events of the previous year. They were still there. They were just really difficult to detect, and then they popped back up into visibility this year quite a bit. So just to set a little more context for you, one of the things New York is famous for is bureaucracy. One of the reasons we really need something like an iMapInvasives platform is because we have a lot of different moving parts and actors who are interested in managing this pest and in conserving hemlock trees. There's my department, there's New York State Parks. We have a Department of Agriculture that is involved in this because hemlock is also a popular nursery and ornamental species in trade. We have a Department of Environmental Protection from New York City who's concerned about hemlock because their drinking water for millions of people comes from the Catskill mountain forests, unfiltered, providing excellent quality drinking water because of the forests and including the significant hemlock portion of that forest in the New York City watershed area in the Catskills. We also have a number of different partnerships for regional invasive species management. These are sort of ground up, volunteer driven, but funded by the state organizations that are meant to drive local prioritization for invasive species management. And we have an institution at Cornell, New York State Hemlock Initiative, who's sort of a glue organization for all of the rest of us working on hemlock, and they're deeply involved in the research into biological control of this pest. So a lot of different actors, a lot of different ways of recording data and different types of data that we are interested in recording. And so that's sort of the topic of the rest of this talk. A lot of the information we get about distribution of HWA does come in from the public and citizen scientists. We will hold IMAP trainings that focus on HWA as a target pest for detection several times a year, especially in those areas of the state where it is an early detection species. The picture on the right there, I believe, is from somewhere in the St. Lawrence Eastern Lake Ontario Prism volunteers. And this is how you actually do monitor for the pest most of the time. You have to get right up close and friendly with a hemlock tree and look for those ovisacs. It's not a pest that we can easily detect from remote sensing or from putting a trap out. It's the kind of thing where having a lot of different eyes on the ground and boots on the ground makes a huge difference to our level of knowledge and the comfort and the accuracy of that knowledge. Anyway, at these trainings, we generally will have somebody from our IMAP team present who helps to teach people how to use the IMAP app, and as well as subject matter experts from PRISMs, from the Hemlock Institute, from my agency, to train people how to actually survey for and recognize this pest, this insect. We also get all kinds of other communications. We get email alerts that come in when citizen scientists enter this kind of data. I have an email alert set up, which is customized, that alerts me that a hemlock woolly adelgid report has been entered, and I'm one of the folks who will go on and use photographic evidence to actually confirm or deny the identification of hemlock woolly adelgid. And I think I probably will move on from there, but I could talk more about that if there are questions about that process at the end. We, like I said, most of our citizen scientists reports do come in through the mobile app. We also get general public reports that just come into agencies through our email accounts, through social media. The occasional snail mail form still comes to my desk reporting a hemlock woolly adelgid presence. And my agency and a lot of the other agencies and professionals have been or are starting to use tools like Collector and Survey 123 to really collect more geospatial data on not only the occurrence of HWA, but our management actions and the impacts that we're seeing on the trees and the forests from the pest. So a lot of different pieces coming in. So one of the really important functions of IMAP for our management of hemlock woolly adelgid is just providing that sort of common platform that data can cross over into. The picture on the right is a fairly up-to-date distribution map of hemlock woolly adelgid in New York State by township based on it's from the DEC webpage. And on the left is the same data coming in from iMapInvasives. Right now, a lot of the data crossover, historically, there have been through bulk uploads of DEC data and other agency data up into IMAP, but also in the reverse, taking IMAP data from citizen scientists and adding that confirmed data to the agency's database. And I know that folks on our IMAP team are right now working on even more ways to sort of streamline and automate this process of crossing over and creating some sort of automated code to bring in and verify data from one source to the other without too much human contact. The other things we've been doing, which has been great since IMAP 3 is now on this ArcGIS online platform, which we've been using for some time, is we can pull IMAP data through a web map service into something like a dashboard and share it with partners or the public. And so this is just a screenshot from a dashboard that one of our foresters made, pulling in the IMAP confirmed hemlock woolly adelgid points, as well as DEC treatment data, and a different view of HWA distribution from the DEC database. You can also use this platform and we do use this platform to share more sensitive data among a smaller group of people, data that we don't necessarily want the entire general public to be able to see, but we want to be able to view it in the same context with this public data. So things like biological control release points could be shared with a smaller group of managers through a different dashboard that's more password protected or otherwise not shared with the general public. And of course, the reason we do all of this is just to better inform how we respond to the pest. With biological control, we really need to know a fairly recent pest status. Like I said, these populations can fluctuate from year to year. So if we're looking for a place where we could release a predator of HWA, it really is important to know how much HWA is there now, not how much was there 5 years ago. Insecticide treatments, both my agency, state parks, and private organizations do use insecticides to treat HWA across the landscape, to preserve some hemlock across the landscape, and having the not only the population data, but being able to incorporate that with tree health data really informs our prioritization of which areas we should be concentrating those types of actions on. We're also working on a cone and seeds collection process to try to preserve the genotypes of different hemlock locations around the state. And that's another thing that we can use IMAP data to help us to guide our efforts. And finally, we're looking at restoration, the potential that there may be at some point in the future some host resistance found. There actually has been a host resistance found in a stand in New Jersey. There's been what they call the bulletproof stand that's been infested by hemlock woolly adelgid for a few decades now and still is alive and somewhat healthy. And so we are actively searching for examples of that and looking for ways that we can incorporate citizen science into that project as well through IMAP. And this is my last slide, just a quick example of what we were talking about earlier. This is a location in New York State called Prospect Mountain. It's in the Adirondacks, southern Adirondacks near Lake George. It's a popular tourist destination. And back in 2017, we first found hemlock woolly adelgid there, or it was first found there, because I can't take credit, by a visiting scientist. And so what you see on the left is the presence of 3 infested trees that was entered by, I don't recall who actually entered the initial data, but the treatment data there was performed by DEC and the Adirondack Local PRISM Partnership, which we call APIP. APIP's coordinator for terrestrial invasive species actually entered that data for us. And then on the right, you see some of the work we did on the expanded survey around that point, showing the not detected points and polygons. And if I could zoom that picture out quite a bit, there's actually a lot more of this. This was an effort that took place over a couple of months at a time when hemlock woolly adelgid had not been found anywhere closer than 40 miles to this really important part of the state where most of our hemlock is, in the Adirondacks. So IMAP was one of the things that really enabled us to quickly respond and coordinate amongst a number of different agencies and make sure that we were all on the same page in terms of where we were at and where we needed to go. So I think my time is probably mostly up. I think I'm gonna hand it over now to Sarah, and thank you all for your attention.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I'm going to start a screen share. Okay, I'm going to make the assumption you can all see my slides unless someone yells at me. My name is Sarah Wurzbacher. I'm a forester with Penn State Extension. I'm going to talk a little bit about our use of iMapInvasives in the statewide extension effort as a component of a monitoring protocol for Ailanthus altissima, or tree of heaven, an invasive plant, which is highly associated with spotted lanternfly, an invasive insect, and increasingly worrisome and important in our region. So let's get right into it. So spotted lanternfly, I'm hoping most of you are aware of this insect. It was introduced to Berks County, Pennsylvania in 2014. It's a sap-sucking insect with a very wide host range. It feeds on about 70+ species, but some of the preferences it shows are for some economically very important species in the natural system, including things like black walnut, maple, tulip poplar, and other hardwoods. And in the agricultural space, things like grapes, hops, and apples, and has caused some significant damage in those systems, very significant losses in some cases where populations are very high. So the agricultural risk with this insect is an extreme concern in our area, but also beyond. I think our recent life with COVID has taught us how the interruption of economic systems can have really broad-reaching effects. And so any kind of regulatory work around this insect, we have concerns about constraints over industry. So it's important to try to do whatever we can to keep this insect from moving very quickly throughout the landscape. The agricultural risks in terms of Pennsylvania, I think the industries impacted by this insect are estimated around $18 billion, and that's just in our state. So it's a very significant issue. And you can see here the current regulatory quarantine map for the known distribution of spotted lanternfly, not really including a very good visualization, but still little dots on the map of where it has been detected, but where there are not established populations. And so detecting those new infestations and managing those really quickly has become a very important part of the management and monitoring of this insect for areas outside of that quarantine zone. So I'm going to just briefly show a little video of, I hope this video kind of drives home the spirit of just what heavy spotted lanternfly pressure looks like. This is in a vineyard. Not only is this heavy feeding pressure causing significant plant stress, but you can see this individual depositing sugary residue we euphemistically call honeydew, which causes sooty mold growth, which is a very important issue for decreasing photosynthetic capacity of vegetation underneath. It has that sooty mold, and it's a quality of life thing. It's a very serious insect. So in terms of the spread of spotted lanternfly, every life stage is a concern. Egg masses are very difficult to see. They look just like mud splatters. They're not very distinctive. And every living life stage of this insect, from the younger instars up to the winged adults, is capable of moving, especially hitchhiking on vehicles. And so this is where a lot of the regulatory focus has been. It's on looking at its distribution by people inadvertently, and that's part of the primary way it has moved around. Human-assisted movement is really what's moving it at this point. So our focus on areas where that's likely to happen in terms of monitoring and early management is extremely important. In addition to those 70 host species that it has, it shows a very, very strong preference for Ailanthus altissima. It's not solely associated with Ailanthus, and that's kind of one of the myths that I think comes up for folks who are just getting introduced to this insect. But especially in the late season movement for these adults, it shows this very, very strong species preference. And so that kind of affords us an opportunity to focus our management efforts as well as our monitoring efforts on a single species to kind of guide our strategy. And so that's been part of the strategy of regulatory partners with the Pennsylvania Department of Ag and also USDA APHIS, which is to look very closely at Ailanthus as a means for detecting and mitigating spotted lanternfly. And so our work with iMapInvasives was to, as an organization, a public service agency with humans in all 67 counties working for Penn State Extension, to provide that capacity to go out and do sort of just a snapshot in time monitoring effort for areas where we know that there is Ailanthus, to try to look for new infestations of spotted lanternfly where we don't necessarily expect to find them, and where we hope we don't find them, but where they might be found, especially where Ailanthus exists. So this has been a statewide monitoring effort, and Shelley kind of talked about the range of work that can happen within iMapInvasives. We've done work all across that range, but this definitely fits in that sort of moment in time, simple process, citizen science kind of approach that's very simple and very easy for beginners to do. And that was how we kind of sold this. So we actually have done this survey over 2 years. And in the first year, the response was put together very quickly. And we were told, okay, we're going to do a uniform survey across the state of Pennsylvania in this gridded map system. We're going to use an app that we have developed internally within Penn State. Everybody's going to go out and survey. And so we did, as foresters in the organization, we did whatever we could to try to make sure people could positively identify Ailanthus on the landscape and know what they were looking at. But there were some challenges with this first approach. It was a great effort and very quickly put forward to put out the smattering of baseline data. But the fact is that app that we used required an internet connection, which if you've ever been in rural Pennsylvania, you know is problematic. There was some misidentification of Ailanthus. There are some lookalike plants. And when you have volunteers who aren't really well versed in vegetation identification, that happens. In addition, these data were stored internally because we use that internal app to collect them. And because of some of the confusion with this early effort, there was a lack of uniform application of the survey protocols and a little bit of a lack of clarity into how we would best apply them. So in the second year, when we were talking about repeating this response to assist our partners, the foresters in the room raised our hands and said, we have a great option for how to improve these protocols, and it's to use IMAP. So the other big change in year 2 is that instead of a uniform approach to our survey, we tried to focus on what the regulatory partners had identified as really high risk or high priority survey locations, where there were major transportation corridors, again, because that human assisted movement was critically important to the movement of spotted lanternfly populations, and where we knew there was significant Ailanthus associated with those movements. And so we kind of came up with this protocol of this is what constitutes a high risk location. We need a more intensive sampling effort in that location based on what the regulatory partners were communicating to us. So this map kind of shows one of the guidances that they were using, and it sort of follows transportation corridors, but it's also has to do with growing degree days and a whole bunch of other issues that they use to try to be a little bit more predictive about where the highest risk locations are. So we did a more focused survey effort looking at these really high traffic areas where a coordinator in each county would identify those high risk sites. And then those same surveyors, including some of those novice vegetation identifiers, would go out with the assistance of the iMapInvasives app to look for Ailanthus on the site in public access areas, record its presence or absence, including some information about its distribution. And the reason that this was so much better and more clear is because the questions asked by that app are so clear and well explained. What's the size of the area, or the precise area in units, up to 1 acre. You can kind of, there's this drop-down menu with very simple responses. And the distribution of the invasive, is it one tree, is it an entire stand? It was really easy to kind of select these criteria and snap a photo. And that was the other really important thing that happened this time around that allowed us to have some expert verification of the data that we were seeing. The other thing we looked at every location, whether there was Ailanthus or not, was did we see spotted lanternfly? I noticed a question in the Q&A earlier about regulated observations of regulated individuals. And so this is a situation where we logged the presence of Ailanthus in IMAP, but whenever we saw spotted lanternfly, we would report it immediately to the regulatory agency using established protocols that regulatory agency was requesting. And in this case, it would be a direct report to the Pennsylvania Department of Ag. So this way we kind of used a hybrid approach to look for this vegetation that was invasive and used IMAP to log it, but we also used the regulatory reporting system for the other invasive we were looking at, which had more strict guidelines, because this agency is the one that says where a newly established population is confirmed, we can only report. So in this process, the real advantages were that we could use that app offline. So we were able to make these observations in the field, snap photos and upload them right away. And because of those photos, we're able to do verification by experts of the images of what we were seeing. So we had much higher accuracy of data. And these observations were also in more high value locations or high priority according to those regulatory agencies. Because it's a public data platform already, the data sharing and public use of that data was immediate. We could also see right away where our other colleagues had been surveying, and we could follow along with the statewide progress, and the partners we were working with could immediately access it. And also it just added a bunch of data to IMAP, which is really important for distribution mapping, especially for an effort like this that was really broad scale and statewide. But the thing that we could also do within IMAP is categorize our entire data set within a project structure. So we could pull out just our own data points to get a sense of what had we accomplished, where have we been, and should we or can we revisit those in the future. And so when you look at our total amount of survey locations, we can look at the map of just what we accomplished in this one project over the course of 1 month. And so these new survey locations that we did in the second year of the survey were about 3,600 locations with 1,300 new Ailanthus presence records, which we were really happy to add to the data set, because we know Ailanthus is everywhere, but it really helps to kind of reinforce that with these distribution maps in public data sets like IMAP. So even though this is a lower number of data points than the prior year of surveying, it's in more targeted locations, and it was really important for us to target those high priority areas. So the advantages for IMAP in that second year was that we could have that coordinated project, but we could seamlessly share those data with the agencies we're partnering with. We could use it offline. The app is very simple for people to follow. The simplicity of the app is an advantage in this case. And we could see right away where we were and integrate our project's data with a much larger regional data set for those distribution mapping issues. And I think the thing I'm most proud of is that we introduced our entire public service agency to this platform so that they can use it, and some of its higher level protocols for treatments and follow-ups in their work going forward. So I was very pleased to use that. I'm happy to answer questions about it later. But in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to the next presenter, Lindsey Wise.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Okay. All right. So my name is Lindsey Wise. I work at the Oregon Biodiversity Information Center at Portland State University. A big part of what we do in my office is track rare species and map habitats for native animals. But for several years, we have also been managing the Oregon iMapInvasives program. There we go. So iMapInvasives in Oregon has been running for almost a decade now. It was chosen by the Oregon Invasive Species Council after some pretty thorough 2 years of surveying of our stakeholders, our agencies, managers, and scientists for what they would need in an invasive management system. And iMapInvasives was the one that was the best fit. It is administered by my office, the Oregon Biodiversity Information Center, and the funding is provided by our participating agencies. It's a pay-what-you-can system with different agencies contributing between $500 to $6,000 to keep this program running year to year. So why Oregon chose iMapInvasives? Some of the same reasons that folks have gone over, because it is publicly available, but there's also this protected aspect to it with different user roles and also the ability to have confidential species or confidential locations. It's also all taxa that covers both terrestrial and aquatic species, positive and negative observations, detailed treatment information. It's flexible. And then the one that I always highlight is that it is a highly collaborative network. Oregon is, we have really benefited from this network and being able to share materials, help documentations, and whichever jurisdiction can fund additional functionality that gets rolled out to all jurisdictions. So that's a huge benefit to us. Now, iMapInvasives is primarily used in Oregon as an invasive species data hub. Many of our partners already have in-house data management systems, either that they're required to use or are legacy systems that they're already tied to. So a lot of our data comes from harvesting those data, and getting it into the standard IMAP data set. We also have some citizen reports, community reports available. We have an Oregon Invasive Species online hotline, which predates iMapInvasives and is now complementary to that. And we also harvest reports from iNaturalist, which is an ever-growing online system for reporting any kind of species. And so we can tap into rare species observations from that as well. So this provides us with a comprehensive data set across the state, coming from all these various agencies and data sources, and provides us with a way to see distributions and planning on a statewide level. Now, some of the ways that IMAP has been used in Oregon, folks use it to choose survey locations, prioritize management areas, run assessments, compare distributions, and identify new invaders. Those public reports really help for filling in the gaps where places that are not under direct management. And so all these things together can give a better picture of where hotspots are in the state or gaps in our understanding. So for just a few examples, this is a free management tool for users. So we do have some partners who are actively managing all their invasive species data within IMAP itself. So these are folks that either don't have access to their own GIS or aren't interested in supporting their own GIS system or other data management systems. So they're keeping track of all their records within IMAP. North Coast Land Conservancy is one example of those partners. They've been using IMAP for several years to keep track of their survey, treatment, and observation data. They're also using it to coordinate between staff and volunteers. So they can use iMapInvasives projects for a single grant or a single season, and both their staff and volunteers can contribute records to that project, and the managers can QC those within IMAP and make confirmations or edits where needed. iMapInvasives has led to direct management of priority species in Oregon. This is an example of a noxious weed that is required for control. It's mat grass, or Nardus stricta. A new site was reported within IMAP by the North Coast Land Conservancy. And another site was discovered when I was data mining for specimen data and did a bulk upload of sites from the Oregon Flora Project. So these two sites were both new to our regulating agency, the State Department of Agriculture, and has led to ongoing management and eradication. And that second site, the data mining site, was particularly important because it is a site that overlaps with an occurrence of an endangered plant, the western lily. So these two species are overlapping, and so it's a very high priority for them. And interestingly, this specimen was from over a decade ago. So that information was out there, but no one had gone looking for it until iMapInvasives came along, and we put the time into that data mining and data consolidation. And lastly, we are using this for regional weed prioritization also. And our office at Portland State University is located within the 4-county cooperative weed management area. And these folks are, it's about a dozen agencies and groups that work together within the region to manage weeds. And so we're using iMapInvasives to coordinate between site management and to follow up on areas that the status is currently not known. So we're working on creating an ArcGIS online dashboard using the iMapInvasives data. And in this map here, I have added symbology to show the different species in different colors. And then we also have symbology for the management status. So for sites that have been treated effectively, there's a black X over them to show the presumed eliminated. That is a status that we can record in iMapInvasives. The ones with the dots in the middle are presumably under treatment. Those are sites that were provided by partner agencies that are actively managing their data and their sites. And then the circled ones are unknown. So those could be ones that came in through iNaturalist or from our online hotline site, sites that folks or the regional managers have not yet gone out to confirm or treat those locations. So we can use iMapInvasives and this dashboard to iterate between IMAP and the partners to update the status of these, make sure these sites get monitored and looked at, and the different partners can coordinate on who is keeping track of what and track their status over time. And that's all that I have, so I'm going to turn it back over to Shelley.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. I'm gonna share my screen again. And I don't have a lot of time left, so I am just kind of gonna continue on the story map. And I'm just gonna touch on a very few things and then open it up for questions. So one of the things that a couple of people have talked about is that IMAP data can be integrated with other data sources. So we have the ability to not only bring in layers from other data sources via an add layer from URL, but our web map services are also available to bring into ArcGIS Online, create dashboards, and other types of GIS-based applications. One of the other things that we have inside IMAP is exchange services. So we will be hosting a variety of exchange services. We've got one included there right now, a TNC Adirondacks web service, but we're also hoping to get USGS NAS, and we are looking into iNaturalist data to be able to host this data and be able to overlay it with our data so that we can easily compare these data with our data on an ongoing basis rather than to have to constantly re-add layers in and out. So that is, we're working on that right now with some of these other partners. We have also brought in our public presence data layer via a web map service into this story map. So you can use this story map, you can go in, you can search for particular areas. I'm gonna just do Albany, New York, and it'll zoom past the hexes. And if you give it a couple seconds, it'll show up some of our presence data that you can actually report on. So you can click on an observation. These are all of our confirmed presence points. None of our unconfirmed data is available publicly. We have confirmers that will go in and confirm records, and once they are confirmed, as long as they're not confidential, they will become part of this public presence data set. You can, from here, click and it will open up the publicly available record. That's an IMAP, and you can find out information on all of these records that are in IMAP right here. I've only included data from 2015 to present. If you would like to see all of the data, we encourage you to go and sign up for a free account. Anybody can use IMAP. You don't have to be part of an existing jurisdiction to sign up for an account. You can enter records in any jurisdiction, regardless if they're participating or not. But if you're not in a participating jurisdiction, those records will remain unconfirmed. So there are lots of advantages to becoming part of the IMAP jurisdictions. Without going into too much information, we have a flyer here that will give you information on how to become part of the IMAP jurisdiction. I encourage anybody who's interested to shoot me an email. This link here will open up and it'll give you my email address, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you on how to get started. I'd be happy to set up a webinar with you and whoever of your colleagues or multiple partners that might be interested. There was a question about whether smaller jurisdictions could collaborate and create a larger jurisdiction, and that is definitely a possibility. We're willing to work with anybody who would like to work with us. So we really hope that you will take the time. There's links on the story map that will take you to IMAP. You can look at the iMapInvasives.org website, or you can go in and create a free account in IMAP and tool around and see what's there for free. But there are lots of advantages of becoming part of our jurisdiction. A lot of the advanced tools and all of getting to help guide development are part of the advantages of becoming part of the network. So we hope that you have enjoyed this talk, and we have maybe a minute or so for questions. I don't know if anybody has any burning questions that have not been answered. Let's see, there's something on chat. I'm not sure, so.